Hey, what's up everybody, we're back with another video from Dovahhatty. This is Unbiased History Augustus, the first emperor. Okay, can you fuck off YouTube?
Pain, sadness, betrayal. Only the gods may ever know exactly what Caesar felt as he bled on the Senate's floor. But among all the uncertainties his assassination raised for Rome, these were certain. The Senate was dominated by treacherous murderers, the barbarians ready to strike, and its people hid in their homes, awaiting the coming decades of violence, death, and decadence. It was in this world that our hero found himself in. His tale began during the year of Cicero and Hybrida, for while Caesar was feeling disgusted by the tyranny shown by the Senate, his niece, Adia, had given birth to a son named Gaius Octavius Furinius. With his father dying nolo when he was just 4 years old, and his new stepfather never giving a single shit about him, Octavian was raised by his grandmother Julia, the elder sister of Julius Caesar, whom Octavian would greatly impress as he delivered her eulogy years later. Octavian later joined the College of Pontiffs, where he met and befriended Marcus Agrippa, a plebeian of unrivaled strength and military skill, and Gaius Maecenas, an equestrian experienced in Roman politics. With their help, Augustus compensated for the poor health the gods gave him in exchange for such a high intellect, making him
Oops, forget the debuff.
very prone to illnesses, which he refused to let hold him back. Growing up during the Civil War, it wasn't long before he heard Caesar was off to fight in Africa. He implored to join him, but was held back by his overprotective mother. When Caesar returned, Octavius approached him for the first time. He told him Agrippa's brother had fought in Cato's army, and so asked for his pardon. Caesar readily granted his wish, and Agrippa was so thankful he would become his most loyal friend. Later, as Caesar was preparing to fight in Hispania, Octavian managed to convince his mother to let him go, only for him to be struck by an illness and then get shipwrecked in enemy territory after recovering. By then, Caesar had just won the Battle of Munda, and when he found out Octavian had braved the countryside to find him, he was convinced his nephew was destined for greatness.
Make you my
He then
secretary.
sent Octavian to study in Macedonia, returning to Rome, where, not long after, he would find himself getting stabbed 27 times by the Senate. Which begs the question, where the fuck was Mark Antony during all that? Actually, Brutus never went after him. He still had some shreds of dignity in his treacherous heart. Shame the Senate didn't. Once Antony realized he wasn't in danger, as consul, he took hold of Caesar's will. In it, he was posthumously adopting Octavian as his son and heir, inheriting his name and fortune. He rushed to inform Octavian about it, and it was at this moment that Cleopatra attacked. You see, Cleopatra had made use of all that semen Caesar had pumped into her, absorbing his divine essence and using it to fuel her Eastern black magic, which she used to cast a mind control spell on Antony, the one she saw as the surest way to take power over Rome and destroy Aeneas' legacy once and for all. Now a puppet of Cleopatra, Antony brought the assassins to the table and negotiate. They were to be pardoned of their crimes, and Caesar's reforms left intact. He also agreed not to talk ill of the assassins to the plebs, as he was to host his funeral oration. But when the day came, and the sight of his dead friend hit his eyes, Cleopatra's spell temporarily broke. Enraged once more, but still a man of his word, Antony didn't badmouth the Senate, but simply reminded the plebs of all the great things Caesar did for them, and Rome at large, letting the assassins' actions speak for themselves. The plebs were driven by Antony's eulogy, running through the streets to sack and burn all property belonging to any of Caesar's assassins, who were then forced to flee the city scared for their lives. By then, the news of Caesar's death had reached Octavian, together with his last wishes. His mother begged him not to accept the adoption. His friends advised him to
Please just live a peaceful, irrelevant life.
take the Macedonian legions and march on Rome. But when destiny came calling for Octavian, neither cowardice nor pure violence would suffice. Through cunning and virtue, he saw his duty to ensure his adoptive father's legacy. His mind made, Octavian sailed to Brundisium with his friends, there meeting with Caesar's veteran legions, who were preparing for the Parthian campaign. Being recognized as Caesar's chosen heir, the legions hailed him as their new leader. This allowed Octavian to get to Rome, and what did he find when he got there? That Antony, Caesar's best friend, was dancing between hating and allying with the Senate. Octavian could smell that Eastern magic was in the air, and instantly realized Cleopatra was behind this. Octavian openly denounced Antony's pardon of the Senate, driving more of Caesar's veterans to his side, including 2 of the Macedonian legions. Seeing where the wind was blowing, Cicero denounced Antony in a series of scathing narrations, driving public opinion to Octavian's side. With just how powerful Octavian was becoming, Cleopatra ordered her servants to change strategy. Mark Antony then renounced his pardon of the Senate, banishing them from Rome, and ordering it to give him Cisalpine Gaul to govern, instead of Macedonia. Antony then marched north with his last 3 legions to force Cisalpine Gaul's governor to abdicate, a one named Decimus Brutus, who violently refused to abdicate. The Senate then declared Antony an enemy of the state, sending both consuls Pansa and Hirtius to defeat him. They didn't have enough legions, so they called on Octavian to join forces with them. Wait, hold the fuck on. Octavian joining his Caesarian legionaries to help the Senate rescue Caesar's assassin from Caesar's best friend and his Caesarian legionaries?
What the fuck is
well,
happening?
You might not see it now, pleb, but it was all part of Octavian's master plan to save Rome. And so he marched...
Get an army, fuck the Senate, avenge Caesar, kill the witch, question. LVCRV.
With the Senate north. And before Pansa could join his forces with Hirtius and Octavian, Antony suddenly ambushed him.
This is really interesting for me because my knowledge of history mostly stops at Caesar. Like, I don't really know actually anything about Octavian. So this is very new to me and very interesting.
Obliterating his forces and severely injuring Pansa, only for then to be his turn to be ambushed by Hirtius, who then almost obliterated his forces. Antony then retreated to siege Decimus and Mutina, where Hirtius and Octavian faced him again. As they charged Octavian's camp, Hirtius was killed in the midst of fighting, with Octavian personally rescuing his body away from the battle. At the end of the day, Antony's army was scattered, with him fleeing north of the Alps to link with Lepidus. Decimus instantly set pursuit, but Octavian just chilled with his 8 legions. Abandoned, Decimus found himself locked between the Alps, Antony's and Lepidus' legions, and hostile Gallic tribes. Not long after, a Gallic chieftain delivered Decimus' head to Antony, who then received a letter from Octavian, wishing for them to talk. The 3 Caesarians later met, abandoning their past differences and forming the Second Triumvirate, with the goal to avenge Caesar's murder and carry on his legacy. The first order of business regarded the Senate, whom, everyone agreed, needed nothing short of a massive purge. Drafting a list of 300 senators to kill, the triumvirs took control of Rome, running a senatorial killing spree and appropriating their wealth. Among the killed were Cicero, who later had his hands chopped off and posted on the forum by Antony, just like a true Caesarian would do. With the remaining senators now being a combination of the ones Caesar appointed earlier and the ones too cowardly to object, the Senate proclaimed the Second Triumvirate a legal institution that gave all 3 members dictatorial authority. To challenge the rule, both Brutus and Cassius had amassed 100,000 legionaries in Macedonia. To confront them, Lepidus agreed to fork over 7
By the way, why does he keep... Okay, whatever.
of his legions to Antony and Octavian. And yeah, he just agreed to doing that. No ifs or buts. Some men are just servile by nature. When the triumvirates landed on Greece, the liberators blockaded their supply lines, hoping to starve the troops out as they held on their fortifications between mountains and swamps. But it was through those very swamps that Mark Antony attacked, surprising Cassius' legions and taking over their camp. And when he heard that Brutus had taken over the triumvirs' abandoned camps, he killed himself out of pure spite. Antony then clashed with Brutus, routing him to the nearest hill, where, defeated, he realized just how much of a traitorous bastard he was, and then killed himself out of shame. After the battle, Octavian...
Y'all noticing how many of these fucking dudes keep killing themselves? Like in the last video we had like those kings that allied with the forces against Caesar, they lost the battle, bam, they killed themselves. Y'all remember that shit?
Cut off Brutus' head and threw it at the feet of a statue of Julius Caesar. His death now finally avenged. The triumvirate victorious, the Republic's provinces were divided among the free men, with Gaul agreed to be left alone. And wait a fucking minute, who the fuck gave his Spaniard to Lepidus? Yeah, that's right. But there was still the question of Sextus Pompey, who had re-emerged after taking control of both Sicily and the senatorial fleet, using it to blockade Italy from grain supplies. And now Octavian was left ruling between hungry plebs demanding wheat to his right, veteran legionnaires demanding retirement lands to his left, and Sextus Pompey dabbing at his boats at the coast. All while Cleopatra had Antony licking her feet, and Lepidus watched paint dry in Africa, or whatever the dude did. Despite these difficulties, Octavian still honored his dead great-uncle, raising him to the status of a god, thus making Octavian Divi Filius, the son of a god. He then held a big party to celebrate the gods, dressing himself as Apollo, the old Trojan.
What the fuck is wrong with his light? With
making
his
Octavian
right
Divi
nut?
Filius, the son of a god. He then held a
That looks like a fucking dried up olive. What the fuck?
big party to celebrate the gods, dressing himself as Apollo, the old Trojan sun deity of logic and reason, whom Octavian held an unexpectable affinity for. But after that, Antony's wife and brother threw a revolt and took over Rome, overthrowing Octavian and finally killing... Just kidding. Antony himself didn't seem to care about his wife's death though. I wonder why. But what happened next, he was really forced to care. The governor of Gaul had recently died, and the legions dared then declared their allegiance to Octavian's banner. This sudden change in the power scale triggered Cleopatra, and thus Antony, to no end. She immediately sent her slave to invade Italy, ally with Sextus and kill Octavian, whom had actually just married Sextus' aunt-in-law, so that didn't really work out. Also, when the legions met at Brundisium, they simply refused to fight Octavian. Left hanging by their armies, Cleopatra then had no choice but to have Antony renew the Second Triumvirate, sealing it with a marriage of Octavian's sister, Octavia, to the recently widowed Antony. And what about Sextus? Well, Octavian allowed him to keep his islands to lift the blockade, later pardoning all exiled Roman families since Fulvius chimp out. Among these included Tiberius Claudius Nero. An extremely auspicious name, isn't it? But chill, he wasn't any of the three people you just imagined right now. Although his son was. But it's his wife we're gonna talk about, Livia Drusilla.
The Tiberius.
Whom?
Nero. Isn't that another one of the fucking great Roman generals? Nero.
After personally meeting Octavian, instantly fell in love, divorced her husband, and convinced Octavian to get on with her. He seemed into it, so divorced Scribonia just after she gave birth to his daughter Julia, and married Livia just after her second son Drusus was born.
What the
I know,
fuck?
names. This is the Julio-Claudian dynasty, you pleb, get used to it. But peace didn't last long, as Sextus, unhappy over just ruling the islands he had re-established the blockade of Italy, destroying Octavian's fleet shortly after. To deal with Sextus once and for all, Octavian had Agrippa, by then governor of Gaul, elected as consul, who proceeded to cut through a lake near Naples and forming an inner harbor, training a new fleet of bigger, stronger ships to face Sextus. The years passed, and the Second Triumvirate was renovated, this time sealed by a military exchange, 120 of Antony's ships for 4 of Octavian's legions. Why Octavian needed more ships we already know, but what's with Cleopatra needing more legions? To invade Parthia, of course, with 100,000 men, 25,000 of which would freeze to death in the Armenian mountain ranges as their siege weapons were destroyed and the legions were forced to retreat. Seeing how stupidly Cleopatra was wasting her men's lives, Octavian never bothered delivering those 4 legions. Instead, he coordinated a combined attack with Agrippa and Lepidus to take down Sextus, as Agrippa's newly trained ships faced Sextus' main fleet.
I said bigger!
Both Lepidus and Octavian invaded the island, taking town after town. And after Agrippa crushed his fleet in the Battle of Naulochus, Sextus fled once more, this time to Anatolia, where he was executed without trial by its local governor. And that was that. The blockade of Italy was lifted, Sicily finally taken, and... wait, is this serious? Lepidus actually tried to claim the island for himself? In answer of this hilarious move, Octavian used his charisma to have all of Lepidus' legions defect to his side, then demoting and kicking him out of the Triumvirate, being left to live a quiet life as Pontifex Maximus in rural Italy with his family, doing what he did best. Absolutely.
It's not that bad. I mean, he's not dead and he's still living in a pretty cool place.
Absolutely nothing. The Republic's provinces were now divided between Octavian's west and Antony's east, and just at the border between them, Octavian carried out a series of campaigns in Pannonia, annexing it into Illyricum. Keep that overall image in mind. Will be relevant in like 5 episodes. But what's relevant right now was just how tight Cleopatra's grip on Antony had become. Not only had Antony completely scored his wife Octavian in favor of Cleopatra, but he had several children with her, celebrated triumphs outside Rome, and dressed, lived, and spoke like an Egyptian. What's more, Octavian managed to get a copy of Antony's will after his death, and when he saw it for the first time, he wasn't sure if he should laugh, explode in anger, or outright vomit, so he just read it to the Senate. In what would later be remembered as the Gibbs of Alexandria, Antony proclaimed his will to... Antony proclaimed his will to have Cleopatra and her children inherit all of Rome's eastern provinces, with Cleopatra being claimed Queen of Kings.
I imagine the Senate was pretty happy to hear that. Jesus Christ.
And her son with Caesar, King of Kings. Outraged at how Cleopatra had made Antony betray the Roman people, with the Second Triumvirate now expired once more, the Senate declared war on her. To start out hostilities, Cleopatra and her slave Antony sailed to Greece to later invade Italy. But stopping them short was Agrippa, whom, together with his veteran sailors, had crushed Antony's allied fleets and cornered them
This is merely those fucking ships keep getting bigger, my guy. Look at those things, they thick as
into
fuck.
acting. Cleopatra then eagerly awaited behind the front lines for an opportunity to attack, but her battle plans had been uncovered by Octavian, whom ordered Agrippa to hold his position. With her legions defecting to Octavian's side more and more, Cleopatra ordered Antony to attack. What ensued was nothing short of a massacre. Agrippa's veteran sailors completely annihilated Cleopatra's fleet, and seeing that defeat was imminent, she cowardly fled the battle for a gap in the lines, followed by her slave all the way back to Egypt. The war was lost. Cleopatra could do nothing but order Antony to muster as many troops as possible before Octavian's arrival, but with all of his generals and troops defecting, there was no point. Unwilling to lift her spell over him, she had him fall on his own sword. But Cleopatra, being a woman, really sucked at suicide, so she just watched Antony wail in agony for a while before he died. A last moment of entertainment before her own time came. Not much later came Octavian, meeting with Cleopatra to discuss the terms of her surrender. In a last-ditch effort, she tried to cast her demonic spells on him, but as the divine descendant of Aeneas, Octavian was completely immune to her eastern tricks, later having her son Caesarion killed, thus depriving her of her last political asset. Unable to cope with being bested by Aeneas' progeny once again, Dido's reincarnation, now aware of her incompetence at suicide, simply let herself be bit by a venomous snake, cursing Rome once again. She will be back. Octavian would then annex Egypt as his own personal property, later visiting the mausoleum of Alexander the Great, and laughing at his pathetic life. For when Alexander became king, he was 20. When Octavian was adopted by Caesar, he was 19. When Alexander took 13 years to conquer the shithole of the East, Octavian took the same time to subdue the entire Mediterranean. And while Alexander's empire disintegrated the nanosecond after he died, Octavian would lay the foundations for the greatest empire in human history. And so, to commemorate his victories, Octavian celebrated 3 triumphs. The first for finally bringing the barbarians of Pannonia to heel, the second together with Agrippa for BTFOing Cleopatra in Actium, and a third one for the conquest of Egypt, marching Cleopatra's children in chains. Present in these triumphs was his nephew, Marcellus, Octavian's chosen heir, together with his stepson, Tiberius, whom hated triumphs, hated people, hated being alive, but he was Octavian's stepson, so he had to act a part. But just as Octavian's unrivaled accomplishments and republican virtues made him popular with the plebs, so had he driven his enemies to the edge of envy and resentment. They were
Is this gonna be another stabbing? Please don't tell me it's another fucking stabbing.
revolted by the existence of someone so perfect, even more so one whom they owed their lives to. Unable to bear the thought of Octavian returning to Rome,
This is the fucking same shit that happened to Caesar in the last episode, no? He pardoned those cunts. They're like, fuck this dude, he's too fucking great, let's kill him.
triumphant once more, a conspiracy was born, led by Lepidus the Younger, with...
Oh?
Nah, just kidding again. With the civil wars now truly over, Octavian demobilized 32 of his 60 legions, paying their retirement with Egyptian gold and keeping the other 28 legions up to secure the provinces. To thank the gods, Octavian built a temple to Apollo, while Agrippa built a pantheon for all gods. It would later be renovated by Hadrian into the form we see today in Rome. You know, while he wasn't busy either killing Jews, building walls, or fucking twinks. It was in this time that the Aeneid was written by Virgil, a magnificent historical document that detailed the entire saga from Aeneas' departure from Troy to Octavian's rise to power, displaying Rome's divine destiny to civilize the world and bring forth an eternity of order. And now, with peace having been brought to Rome, Octavian could finally resign his consulship, knowing that he did his part. But once the Senate heard that he planned to resign, they begged him to reconsider, falling on their knees and imploring their master to keep giving them orders. Some men are truly servile by nature. Octavian was reluctant, having no real desire for power, but if the people's representatives proclaimed him so indispensable, then it was his duty to answer their call. In 27 BC, the Senate convened to grant Octavian 10 years of proconsular authority over Egypt, Spain, Gaul, Syria, Cilicia, and Cyprus, together with the 20 legions in them stationed, and to cement his authority, they granted him a new title. Octavian's full name from there on would be Imperator Caesar Divi Filius Augustus, the Princeps of the Republic, and the first Emperor of the Roman Empire.
Oh, was actually the first
And now
emperor.
that the Republic's institutions had been safely enveloped into the imperial fold, Augustus, as Rome's first emperor, set about the arduous quest of stabilizing the empire's borders, starting with Hispania, whose border guard just had to be ended, and Augustus didn't care how many illnesses he caught while doing it. He then had to escort Maecenas away after he revealed some information about a plot to his wife, making him untrustworthy. But he had bigger problems to deal with by then, like that ultra-lethal typhoid fever he just contracted now. Laying on his deathbed, and with Marcellus being way too young, Augustus proclaimed Agrippa to be the one to succeed his office as princeps. But just as his life hanged on the balance, his medic brought the urn containing Caesar's divine ashes, using it to heal Augustus from his fever. Once healthy again, Augustus oversaw another set of reforms to his position. He had no need to be granted continuous consulships, but humbly asked to be nothing more than a permanent tribune, and proconsular authority in whatever province he physically found himself in. And what's a better way to celebrate it than to have your intended heir die of food poisoning, killed by your own wife no less. Why did she do it? To have her son Tiberius be the heir, of course, whom Augustus always kept at the bottom of his list for potential heirs. And with his daughter now widowed, Augustus remarried her to Agrippa, with whom they would have 5 children, among them Gaius and Lucius, whom Augustus adopted as his heirs. In his next step to stabilize the
Keep on fucking my daughter out, friend.
adopted as his heirs. In his next step to stabilize the empire's borders, he set to deal with Parthia, as had once Crassus, Caesar, and Antony. Augustus' approach was swift and simple. First, he sent Tiberius to restore Armenia as a client kingdom, then started to deploy more and more legions on Syria, then contacted the Parthian king, offering him a choice. He could either return Crassus's eagle standards and agree to peaceful relations, or he could refuse, and have war against the full might of a united Rome with vengeance in their eyes. As you can see portrayed here, the Parthian king then returned all eagle standards, and ran back to his desert shithole. And in order to prevent any further conspiracies while Augustus settled the empire's problems, he created the Praetorian Guard. The historians in the audience know well where this will lead. Let's enjoy it while they
You're the most cool looking units from fucking Rome Total War 1.
were loyal bodyguards, because they won't be for fucking long. But Augustus himself would remain uncorrupted, constantly spending his fortunes to build roads throughout the empire, making so that all roads led to Rome. But there was another issue, beyond the realm of the provinces. It was the hard fact that Rome had become a degenerate cesspool of adultery. Long gone were the traditional conservative Roman families with a strong father and an obedient mother that birthed many children. These days, most Roman women just spread their legs for anything resembling a dildo, refusing to have many, if any, children at all. As a man far ahead of his time, Augustus predicted that such degenerate behavior would eventually bring forth the destruction of the state. So Augustus used his powers to reward all families that maintained their virtues, and punish those who didn't. Not that his anti-degeneracy policies achieved much. He was a lost cause by then. But not for his stepsons Drusus and Tiberius though, both of whom married and had their own kids. Among them Germanicus, named so for his father's victories in Germania. What victories, you ask? Well, you see, after a legate got defeated by some invading Germs in Gaul, Augustus had had enough of the barbarians up north. As he surveyed a map of the northern provinces, he concluded the ideal imperial borders were defined by the Danube and Elbe rivers, providing a near impenetrable barrier from the lawless lands beyond. And so, Augustus set towards the quest that would consume the rest of his natural life: civilizing Germania. For this enormous task, he sent both of his stepsons, Tiberius and Drusus, whom assisted each other in finally conquering the Alpine tribes for the empire, extending its borders to include the provinces of Raetia and Noricum. In Raetia, the brothers quickly learned of the Germanic unwillingness of being civilized, expelling as many Germs up north as they could. And while they do that, tell me, remember Lepidus? He just died about nowish, so Augustus inherited his title as Pontifex Maximus. Just saying. And say, do you remember when Augustus conquered Pannonia? Yeah, he sent Agrippa to mop up some resistance there, only for him to be secretly poisoned by Livia and die just like that. The loss of his most trusted general and closest friend broke the emperor's heart, and it was all downhill from here.
So can I suck any dicks I want now?
To secure his family's integrity, Augustus made Tiberius divorce his wife and marry Julia, whom he hated for being an adulterer whore, but the emperor didn't know, so didn't understand why Tiberius was complaining so much as he took command over Pannonia. All while Drusus spent his days campaigning over the Rhine, slaughtering all Germs he could find between it and the Elbe, including the Cherusci, whose prince he took as hostage. And while he would have him killed if he could, Drusus hoped that if a Germ could be brought from a young enough age into the legions, fought alongside Romans and lived alongside Romans, then he would eventually be civilized. And so, that boy would be raised as a legionnaire, given the name Arminius.
Oh, Is this the dude that he fucking betrayed the legions because he knew how they work and slaughtered a couple of legions? I think that's him, right? I don't remember. Was it Arminius? I'm thinking of another guy.
Back in Rome, Drusus's success was greatly scaring Livia, as he robbed the emperor's attention from her favorite son. And while he was busy renaming a month after himself, Livia bribed a soldier into her service, sending him north. And while Drusus took a stride through the woods, the assassin suddenly knocked him off his horse. Mortally injured, Drusus died a few weeks later, leaving his family at the hands of his eldest son, Germanicus. Drusus's death was yet another heavy blow for Augustus, but by no means the last. Maecenas' death came soon after, leaving him with no old friends to speak of. And to make matters worse, the Parthians were meddling with Armenia once again, and when he sent Tiberius to deal with it, he refused, and exiled himself to Rhodes. Why? To get away from his whore of a wife, that's why. Whom Augustus just didn't realize for who she was, banishing her and all her lovers from Rome. But thankfully, the emperor still had his grandchildren to rely on, so he sent Gaius to Armenia instead, where Livia would bribe his own soldiers to kill him during a siege. Lucius would later get infected with a fever by Livia's orders while in Gaul, and also die. Postumus, following Livia's advice, grew up to be a vicious little cunt, so he had to be banished. And Julia the Younger, also listening to Livia, became as much of a degenerate whore as her mother, getting banished as well.
Fuck.
Livia forgot to ruin Agrippina though, and so Augustus happily married her to Germanicus. But now that Livia had deprived Augustus of just about enough potential heirs, he was forced to recall Tiberius to Rome as his heir, whom, after hearing of Julia's banishment, had no more reasons to exile himself. The only condition was that Tiberius adopted Germanicus as his heir, so that the empire would be ruled by Julians again after him. Yeah, Germanicus won't be long for this world. Back to the provinces, Augustus later sent Tiberius to Pannonia, where a huge rebellion had broken out. And I do mean huge. 1 million rebels, like fuck me dude.
What?
Rebels, like fuck me. Huge.
1 million?
1 million rebels, like
Jesus.
fuck me dude. Later sending Germanicus to help crush it, alongside most of the empire's legions. During the revolt, Arminius would distinguish himself as a competent and loyal soldier, later being promoted to serve beside the new commander of the 3 remaining Rhine legions, Publius, Quintilius, Varus.
Yes! The only reason I know this because he was one of the historical battles in Rome Total War 1, I think. Y'all remember those fucking scripted battles? I think he was one of them where you get ambushed in the fucking forests.
With the conquest of Germania so close to being finished, Arminius took this chance that most legions had been sent away, to show his true colors.
Yeah.
Maintaining his farce, he convinced Varus to let the German tribes host a cohort each for the winter, having them all slaughtered in his back. Later telling him of a fake rebellion in the north, deep inside the Teutoburg forest.
Yes, that's
Honor-bound
exactly, yep.
and dismissing his officers' alerts, Varus went down the path Arminius had suggested, crossing a swamp-wide olive formation, surrounded by dark forests, and right into his ambush. With a genocidal drive inherent to their being, the Germanic hordes overran the Romans, slaughtering all the defenseless soldiers, hunting down the survivors in the forest, live sacrificing the officers to satiate their evil gods of chaos, and destroying every last shred of civilization the Romans had brought with them beyond the Rhine. Betrayed and beaten, Varus grabbed hold of his sword and took
This was the historic quote, what was it? Give me back my legions or some shit like that?
his own life. When news of the catastrophe reached Augustus, the emperor was broken for a final time, traumatized by the sheer evil displayed by the Germans. He secluded himself in the imperial palace, stopped eating for days and shaving for months. His mission to civilize Germania had failed. The ideal imperial borders would never be reached. Forever the Germs would remain as the irredeemable enemies of all that is civilized and good. As his last years passed by, Augustus would occasionally lay on a dark corner of the wall and scream.
Varus. Oh! Quintus Varus, give me back my legions!
At the height of his depression, he would pay a secret visit to his last living grandson, Postumus, who had by then repented of his violent ways. But Livia quickly found out and chose to secure her son's position as heir once and for all.
Yo, this fucking bitch, she murdered like half the fucking world. What the fuck, bro?
As Augustus traveled through Italy, he passed by Nola, the city his biological father had died in so long ago, eating away the figs he so enjoyed. But by then, his wife's poison had already kicked in. Augustus struggled as long as he could, but he continued to lose strength, his mind slowly wavering. After a lifetime of transforming Rome from a city of bricks into one of marble, he whispered his final words. Have I played the part well? Then applaud as I exit.
Is this fucking Minecraft? Okay, well that was the Unbiased History. Augustus, the first emperor. That shit was fucking awesome. What do we got next? Ah, that's not what we got next. Okay, well we'll see what's next. Hopefully there is a next part, because I'm really down for these. These are fucking awesome. I enjoy these immensely. Anyway, it's your boy Proftrof. Like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Everybody have a nice fucking day. Come on, mouse.